Hi there, Doug Hooley here with the second episode of Well, That's All I Got to Say About That. And today I want to talk a little bit about being biblically watchful. I talk a lot about that concept in my first book that I wrote called Watch, which is a commentary on the Olivet Discourse, which was Jesus's talk that he gave regarding his own coming back to this earth to his disciples while they were on the Mount of Olives, Olivet Discourse. Olivet Mountain Talk. Okay, so biblical watchfulness, very important. Is in fact being watchful for his return and the circumstances that will accompany it is an imperative command from Jesus. What I say to you, the disciples, I say to all, watch. Big deal. We have lost something that the early church, the early ecclesia had. That is the passionate looking forward to the return of Jesus, the second coming. They even greeted one another with the cry, Maranatha, which both means in Aramaic, the Lord has come and the Lord is coming. That's how they greeted one another. They were obsessed with the idea on up until about the 4th century when Rome and the emperor got a hold of the church. And then things got wonky and they changed. But prior to that, Paul had to write to the church in Thessalonica and console them and set them straight on what would accompany the Lord's return, because they thought they'd missed it. About a third, I think it's actually 27% of the New Testament concerns the return of Jesus and the end of the age. You don't hear about that talked about in church very often, though, do you? Not just the fact that it's 27%, but I mean, you hardly hear any teaching on the second coming, which causes a vacuum that's filled in with a bunch of nut job theories, which I hear them from people that are communicating with me all the time. Probably wouldn't be as big a problem if those who are supposed to be in charge of shepherding or pastoring the ecclesia would put some time into studying and learning about this stuff so that they would feel confident in imparting their knowledge to the people that they are shepherding. I get why they don't, because number one, they're typically, not always, but typically not knowledgeable on the topic. And secondly, they're afraid of all of the blowback they're going to get because everybody has their own opinion because they were never taught correctly in the first place. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Being somebody who is very interested in the return and watching for the return of Jesus, his second coming, every single day, I hear of people superimposing the headlines over the top of prophecy and trying to read into prophecy what it means because of their situation that they're seeing around them. Like how uncomfortable we are in the United States because of the gas prices or because somebody's making us wear a mask. So it must be the end of the world. And so that is what we take as signs for the end of the world. Let me say something. The United States could perish tomorrow, God forbid, and that would not bring about the second coming of Jesus. Hitler can kill off 6 million Jews, and it didn't bring Jesus back. A third of the world in the mid-14th century can perish because of the Black Death, the plague, and Jesus didn't return. Terrible things happen. And it just means it's another day in paradise on planet Earth, a planet that is fallen apart under Satan's leadership. Anyway, so these well-intended people pointing towards things all the time that are not biblical signs of the end. That's why biblical watchfulness is so important because, number one, biblical watchfulness includes learning the signs, becoming knowledgeable of what the Bible says about the signs that will accompany Jesus' return, that he tells us, commands us to watch for. Secondly, it's after you know those things, not before, like so many make the mistake of doing. After you know those things, then observe the world around us in light of those things. And like half of my time spent being biblically watchful is saying, nope, that means nothing. Nope, just another day in paradise. Nope, just another war breaking out. They are either the other side who are pointing to all these false signs are either just flat out unbiblical, or they in fact are pointing towards things that Jesus said are not indications of his return, like wars and rumors of wars and famines and that kind of stuff. Just another day on our planet. Okay, so learning what the Bible has to say, watching the world around us in light of those things, and finally abiding in Jesus according to the principles he set out until he returns. That, in a nutshell, is biblical watchfulness. I got to tell you that once you learn these things, you're going to see that most of the signs are going to center on Israel, on Jerusalem specifically. Although the world may be affected by some of the things we find in prophecy, like obviously if an asteroid slams into the earth named Wormwood, or a mountain falls into the sea and a third of the earth's waters turn blood red, and those kind of things, obviously those will affect us here, even in the United States or wherever you're watching this. I know that I've got people around the world now. Hello, Paul in Namibia. Anyway, what we really need to focus on when we're being watchful is where to watch, because these real signs that are going to take place will take place in Israel. And so you're not going to see that level of detail of the things that may be important by watching the news provided to you from the Western media. You just won't, especially the United States. It may get mentioned from time to time. So what I've done here is I've put together my private list. It's not private, like I won't share it, but my own list of news agencies and Twitter feeds that I use to keep up with what's going on in Israel. So there it is. Those are my Israeli news sources. I just recently started watching the Channel 7 news from Israel. I put their website, but you can subscribe to their YouTube channel. And so every day I will tune that in. It's about a 10 to 15 minute news roundup of what's important in Israel. So, if you were watching that right now, you would know, for example, that the military officials and top government officials in Israel are preparing actively for what they are calling an inevitable war, and a great war, the Great War, with Iran and their proxies, some of the countries that border Israel. So much so that they just engaged in the largest military war games in conjunction with the United States that they have ever had before. The U.S. took over ships, thousands of troops, the Air Force, and practiced all sorts of missions with the Israelis, dropping live munitions in the southern deserts of Israel to simulate bombing countries in distant places. They practiced repelling battles from sea. I saw a video of their fleet, their flotilla of nuclear submarines. They got a bunch of them. These guys are serious about it, and they are preparing for war. Could be something very significant there. Just saying. Anyway, that's one of the sources, News 7. There's also the Jerusalem Post. Haaretz is a more left-leaning newspaper that's been around since 1919. It's considered their paper of record. And then on Twitter, if you're into that, Haaretz also has a Twitter feed. The Jerusalem Post does. I also subscribe to the Times of Israel. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his personal Twitter feed and his official Israeli PM Twitter feed. And then I also subscribe to the Israeli Defense Force Twitter feed, because it's just like a real-time thing. They'll talk about some of the people that they searched that day and found weapons on them, and they prevented some kind of a terrorist attack. Anyway, watch Israel. There's some sources that will allow you to do so. That is like where to watch. We'll have to some other time talk about what to watch for, but that's what my book Watch is about, and I talk about in several videos. But for now, that is all I got to say about that. I want to thank you for watching this, taking the time to do so. Please do me a solid and click on the subscribe button. And until next time, God bless you, and Maranatha.